Well, the countdown is on to the so-called sequestration in the United States, a big word that basically means a whole bunch of automatic cuts will be done to the U.S. budget. And if you think you've heard this before, you're right. It is just the latest fiscal crisis in Washington. Are the spending cuts really as scary as they sound? Our U.S. Express panel is here to take us through it. Richard Fowler is a radio host and Democratic strategist, and Corey Crowley is a Republican strategist. So, guys, a whole lot of noise about these automatic budget cuts. Looks like they are going to happen on Friday, regardless. Richard, how much of this is melodrama, do you think?
Well, I don't think it's melodrama at all, Todd. I think on Friday we'll see these cuts actually happen. And I think the reason why these cuts will happen is because Republicans in Congress are not willing to get a deal done. Congress was not willing to get to work. And the sad part here, Todd, and I think the part that I want all the viewers to understand is that when all these cuts happen, all these cuts takes place, when people get furloughed and 70,000 kids are kicked off a Head Start, Congress will still get their paycheck no matter what. So it seems as though they've made a deal. They basically made a deal so they get paid while everybody else in this country suffers. And it's really sad.
What I'm hearing now is that this sequestration will go forward for about 3 weeks or so until the end of March, in which case there'll be another budget deal. So there could be a little bit of a game of chicken going on here for the next couple of weeks. Corey, what damage are these cuts really going to do, especially if it's short term?
Well, the damage that they're going to do is completely manufactured by this White House and this president's administration. The fact of the matter is, take Department of Justice, for example. Eric Holder spoke this morning to the attorneys general of the various states gathered here in D.C. and talked about all the horrible things that will happen at DOJ with the $1.6 billion that's getting cut from their budget. The FBI is building a brand new building up in Maryland that costs $1.2 billion. So I can find some ways to save a little money over the Department of Justice pretty quickly and easily that don't involve prosecuting one less case or helping one less state with their law enforcement.
There we go again.
The problem with this is that the president has directed his entire administration, everyone who gives a speech or talks to the press, to say how horrible this is going to be so that they can breeze over the fact that, as Max Baucus, the Senate Finance Committee chairman, said just last April on the news, the President of the United States and this White House proposed this sequestration. It is actually something of his own making, quite frankly. That was Max Baucus, Democrat Senate Finance Committee chairman's own quote.
There we go again, Corey. This doublespeak that Republicans continue to have. So the FBI is trying to make sure that our country stays safer and that we could be better at intelligence.
Congress has been in the same building for more than 200 years, and the FBI has been there for 40, and they need a new one?
That building's going to be used for new technologies and new innovations, and here we go saying it's a bad idea. And this is completely and totally part of the Republican doublespeak. It's okay when they do it. It's okay when George Bush runs up the credit card. But now when Democrats do it, it's a big problem.
When sequestration goes through, which it will on Friday, federal spending, even after that $85 billion in cuts across the board, federal spending will still be $15 billion higher than it was just last year. So there's more money on the table for the federal government this year than last year by $100 billion. 85 will get cut. They still get to spend more than last year.
Okay, guys, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because here's the view from up here in Canada. I mean, it seems all so juvenile. I mean, you had the fiscal cliff. Now we have the sequestration. Your country is the world's superpower. Is this any way to sort of deal with your economy? It seems like kids arguing in a playground. Richard.
That's what happens when there's no leadership.
I completely agree with you, Todd. It does seem like kids playing in the playground, and sadly, the leader of that playground mafia is none other than John Boehner. They refuse to get any work done. They refuse to put any deal forward. They would rather play politics with the American people than getting to work. This has been the most unproductive, the last Congress is the most unproductive Congress in American history, and I think this Congress will be more unproductive than the last Congress.
And this White House has proposed less pieces of legislation and sent them up for signature than any other president in the country.
This White House has done everything it can to work with this Congress. Beyond that fact, this White House has passed more executive orders.
One simple thought, which is that no idea ever introduced in Congress becomes law without the signature of the President of the United States. And this president signed sequestration into law after proposing the idea to Congress himself. And if he didn't want it to become law, all he had to do was not sign it. It's pretty simple.
When we put sequestration together, when Democrats and Republicans came across the aisle, the whole idea was they would all come together and find ways to increase revenues and also also make some cuts to the government. The Democrats have held up our
And yet
side.
we've done the increasing revenue part.
The president has proposed
All right,
over
guys.
$1 trillion in cuts.
Let me jump in here. There's lots of sound and fury. Not sure how much it signifies. Let's move on, though, to our other topic, because we only got about 3 minutes left. I want to talk to you about Chuck Hagel. So Chuck Hagel, decorated Vietnam War vet, takes charge of the U.S. Defense Department. It happens today after a pretty nasty confirmation fight. He spoke to the Pentagon employees. We're going to take a quick clip of what he had to say. Listen to this.
Difficult as our jobs are. Budget, sequestration. I don't need to dwell on all the good news there. That's a reality. We need to figure this out. You are doing that. You have been doing that. We need to deal with this reality.
Okay, Corey, what lies ahead for Chuck Hagel?
Yeah, he's got a difficult job over at the Pentagon. Whether sequestration aside, whose fault sequestration is aside, he's got to deal with the ramifications of that. And he's come off of a difficult confirmation battle, as you pointed out. I think time will tell. We'll see the job that he does. I think you'll find now that he's defense secretary, he'll get support from Capitol Hill. Even those people who voted against him will support him in his role. They'll give him the tools that he needs to do his job, and they'll stand with him. But he's got a difficult task ahead.
Yeah, Richard, how much of a challenge is that going to be for Chuck Hagel, to work with some of the lawmakers who attacked him during the confirmation process and the $46 billion in cuts that the Pentagon is facing?
Well, I completely agree with Corey here. I think he's going to have a tough job ahead of him. But one thing that we know is that Chuck Hagel was the right man for the job when the president picked him. He understands what our country is going through right now. Being somebody who went to Vietnam and transitioned back into civilian life, he gets what our troops are going through and what they will be going through over the next 4 years. Beyond that point, the interesting thing to point out here is that, will members of Congress be able to work with him? People like Ted Cruz and people who obstructed him, like John McCain, will they be willing to come now and finally work with him after creating all that obstruction, all that upheaval for no reason, which sort of speaks volumes to the Republican caucus?
It's the process. They're allowed to do that. And I think you'll find that just like every confirmed nominee, even those who barely squeak by, they'll get cooperation from the Senate. To insinuate they won't is ridiculous.
Listen, Corey, the truth of the matter is, Corey, there's never, ever been in American history a secretary filibustered by the United States Senate.
There was no filibuster here. He's Secretary of Defense today, and I don't recall watching anybody stand on the floor and filibuster.
You could play this. You could play the games with the rules that you want to.
All right, guys.
You can play the games.
If it looks like a duck and smells like a duck, it's a duck.
Richard and Corey in Washington, as always. Thanks so much, guys, for being on the U.S. Express today.
Thanks, Todd.
Be well.